Welcome everyone. I'm Alexander Mihalcha, and today we have one of the industry leaders, Callum Flynn, CEO of Chameleon Energy Consultants. Welcome, Callum. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, Alexander. How about yourself?
I'm great. Thanks for asking. And also because I'm excited to have you on the podcast today, and I'm sure you're going to be of great value for the audience. Now, before we dive in, could you give us a quick overview of what Chameleon Energy Consultants does?
Of course. So we have two business units. So we have Chameleon Events, which is our foundation company, which specialises in conferences looking at decarbonisation and energy transition globally, which mainly looks at how the biggest energy carbon emitters can reduce their carbon footprint via carbon capture and storage and hydrogen, but also other different energy matrix as well. So we bring together policymakers, regulators, asset owners, EPCs, financiers, and academia. And on the back of this, we work on our second business unit around community energy consultants, where we work strategically with different companies that are looking to penetrate different areas globally that need assistance. So, for example, within Southeast Asia, we are having a lot of traction because they're looking at the UK and European regulation
Right.
and policy matrix, which we're orchestrating the key players to have influence and guidance from a governmental and industrial aspect. To keep it very, very
Right.
short.
Okay, that's fascinating. And basically, what inspired to create Chameleon Energy Consultants? Was there a specific moment or experience that sparked this journey?
Yeah, of course. So from our events, I think from our events business, we had a lot of different clients, a lot of different companies that were looking to how they could expand, how they could transgress. So obviously my background was from oil and gas, so
Yeah.
now it's now transitioned into energy transition. Obviously I'm probably a bit younger than maybe obviously maybe the my other sort of predecessors in terms of the obviously the age range and you move with the times, as they say. So mainly looking at how you move from a one company into another sector, but modifying your technology, your applications, and the way of working to suit what the world needs. That's pretty much where we sit ourselves. So, from a consultancy perspective, we're not a tech consultancy. We have independent consultants that work alongside us that have worked on major projects globally. But we are mainly sat on the position of guiding people in the right way and
Right.
advising people where they need to go to, rather than because I think with anyone, I'm sure you probably understand this, Alexander. Um, there's so many sectors and there's so many things to focus on. You need to
Right.
use your attributes and what your USPs are to maximize your one your client's profitability, but also your own as well.
Right. Right. Makes sense. And for example, what was your background before starting this venture?
But it's a very, very strange background, so I will be completely transparent. So I start off my when I was 18. I run in nightclubs and DJing, and from then from the event side, I took my lessons learned. Instead of being B2C, I used it to B2B, so business to
Okay.
business instead of business to consumer. And the energy sector really captivated my audience and my attention because there's so many different facets and there's so many different avenues that you can go down. So I don't think there's any one silver bullet that can help climate change. I
Yeah.
think it is going to be several different aspects, several different technologies, several different energy resources, which makes it very, very more interesting for me, which is why I'm here now.
Right. Right. Interesting. And for example, looking back, what would you wish you've done differently in those early days?
Um, It's a very, very good question. I think post COVID, I was traveling from Aberdeen to London to Houston quite
Yeah,
frequently. After COVID, we've now got Teams, we've got Zoom. So as we're doing now, it's not needed. So if you look at your carbon emissions footprints for your travel, for example, um, this is a massive impact because
yeah,
if it's just me traveling, but then imagine 1,000 other people traveling. So that's going to make a massive, huge impact on the carbon footprint, but also productivity. I think when you're with um, on a very, very high level, intricate relationship, face to face, in my opinion, is still needed. But initial conversations and analysation and qualification can be done over Teams. I think it's what they call in the building industry that once you have a foundation, so i.e. a foundation and a relationship with a client or potential clients, you then build up rather than obviously just, for example, flying over to Houston just for one meeting, which doesn't really make much sense anymore.
yeah. Yeah, but you have basically to nurture the relationships with those potentials.
I think personally, this is my opinion by the way, that I think you can, as long as you qualify your relationships with the client,
Of course,
as
yeah.
long as you have a common interest, a common vision, and a common goal, that is the perfect foundation, which can be done over a Teams call or Zoom call. But in my opinion, I still do think a face to face relationship and meeting someone directly is really key. That's my opinion.
Yeah, 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 yeah. But this is the initial like touch point. But after
Yeah,
that, you have to
correct.
nurture, like to work on that relationship. Yeah. And I have a curiosity by then because you mentioned this, and I think this is very interesting. So, what inspired you to focus on decarbonization for the industrial sectors?
So basically, I used to work for a previous employer, and they specialised within different areas of different sectors like health and education, and I was specialised within energy. And the energy sector, it's very, very interesting because there's so many different energy vectors. So, for example, I started off with shale gas, which is drilling within obviously the ground to get shale gas out of the ground, which is quite well in Vaca Muerta in Argentina, and also the Permian Basin
Yeah,
um, within the US, and then coal methane, which is in Australia, and and all these different technologies then amalgamated um, and came into different aspects and things work within different places. So I call the jigsaw puzzle, which I find really interesting because it could be geothermal, it could be carbon capture, it could be hydrogen, it could be wind, it could be tidal, it could be solar. So you basically look at what assets you have around you, what infrastructure you have around you. It's a bit more challenging, and I like a challenge. So for me, it was more of an exciting journey rather than and a more challenging journey than your traditional go-to basis where it's what you follow suit or protocol. You have to sort of break boundaries and ask questions
yeah,
to make a difference. And obviously, without being corny, obviously, Chameleon events, our tagline is implementing change. So we wanted to make a change to society and to the global environment, and that's what we do. So we don't sort of nod and agree. We challenge the hierarchy, the politicians, industrials, and local people to say, okay, this is what you need to do. So we work very, very closely with local colleges, local high schools to educate the obviously the younger generation as well, because I think that is very imperative.
Yeah, interesting. But let's go back to when you first started. For
Mhm.
example, what major challenges or gaps did you see in the market that made you think this needs to be solved?
Yeah, so from if you want from a business to business person perspective, I was doing all the new generation work. I was coming up with all the ideas. So instead of doing it for someone else, I um, took it upon myself to start my own business to because then I had more control, I had more direction, I had a vision. I had between a 3 to 5, 10 year vision,
Yeah,
um, and I wanted to. And when you're working for someone underneath you, this is not against anyone that wants to do this, by the way, but you are limited and restricted in terms of what you can do and what you can say.
right.
So for me, it was I had a vision, and I thought I had a very good blueprint, and it's worked well.
Okay. And also, could you share the story behind the name Chameleon Events and your slogan, Implementing Change?
Yeah, of course. So basically, so the 3rd of January 2018, I decided to start the company. So I thought of the name. I knew my vision. I knew what I wanted to do. I spoke to my family, spoke to my friends, and if it was that to my mother, I said to me, "How about Chameleon? Because it can adapt and change." And as you can see behind me, you can see the
Yeah,
logo. That's where obviously the chameleon came from, because that's what chameleons do. They adapt and change to the environment, and they adapt and change to the susceptible scenarios. So that was the reason behind it. And as I mentioned beforehand, I had a vision, and I was restricted working underneath a corporate organization where I couldn't excel on what I wanted to do. So it was a risky move, people may say, but I think when you're an entrepreneur, it's very, very valuable. And it's something that commitment's always needed.
yeah, right, right. And for example, how do you help the industry adapt quickly to geopolitical shifts and other changes?
I speak to government officials, regulators, key industry stakeholders, and rather than your normal go-to consultants, for example, which will probably try and, um, for example, look for like a quotation or just try to win work. We don't. We work opposite. We make sure that we can fit in with their remit. So mainly we don't work with the big. We do work with big companies, but from the consultancy side, it's SMEs, or
Yeah,
small to medium enterprises, where they don't have too much guidance. Because obviously, you go to the big companies, they've got a huge department that can do that for them. Where the small companies don't really have that sort of scale or remit where they can actually access this information. So we first qualify that we can help, and if we can help, we'll put together a proposal and a business plan in terms of saying, okay, this is where we think we can help. This is where I think we can accelerate your return on investment, and this will be the outcome at the end of obviously of our project together. So I think it's establishing relationships where people understand each other. I think I think it's an old school business in a way where you need to make sure that you and your clients are on the same page, and that you are have the same ethos and the same vision. If not, things get a bit derailed.
yeah, yeah, makes sense. And you mentioned acting as a bridge between industry and government. So, how do you facilitate collaboration between these two sectors?
It's very difficult, to be perfectly honest, because governments have the industry and governments in a public environment, like for our events, for example, they can't say things in a public environment because things can be used in an untoward way, in terms of where words can be twisted into something else. So they've got to be very careful what they say. So what we're now doing is we're working with industry and government on a closed doors environment where people can speak freely. So we can people can have a voice and actually iron out the 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 harsh details and the biggest issues without being penalised via social media
Mhm.
or public sort of influence, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And walk us through how Chameleon Energy Consultants address these challenges. What makes your approach unique?
I think the unique approach is relationships. I think what we've built, I've been working in the industry for 12 years. So it's trust is the biggest one, respect is the second one, and loyalty. So people know when we invite someone to a certain bespoke group or to a certain format, that the at ease that they don't need to be worried about what they say, for example.
Yeah,
Also, that the messaging is going to be correct because from an event organizer hat, there's that many events out there that you could go to an event every single day of the week between September and September to December, and then probably from April until July. So you have to be unique in that perspective. And I think when it comes to our clients, our retention rates are around about 90%. And that's only because the 10% that aren't there are people that are trying to market themselves to see if it will work for them or not, which is just standard business.
yeah, of course. But why is it important for you to qualify clients before engaging with them?
Very, very easy. Their vision and what they're looking to achieve. And if it aligns with our goals and our ambition, then it's perfect. We've had several people come to me and say, we'll pay X amount of money for a sponsorship deal. And I've turned the money down and said, no, like, why not? I said, because you're not going to get return on your investments. So I won't let any of my clients um, put their money into our company or invest in ourselves if I'm confident or that I can return their investment or certainly um, help them move things forward. Because unfortunately, like business, you don't win every deal,
Yeah,
but you can help position people in the best way that you can.
of course. Yeah. And also, because you mentioned this, could you share examples of times when you turned down potential clients because they weren't a good fit for you?
Yeah, of course. So I had, I'm not, obviously can't mention company names due to GDPR, but I had a company that were offering over the odds for a sponsorship deal, and they were looking for this demographic of audience. And I told them who was coming, and I sent them the delegate list over in terms of previous attendees, previous clients. And to be honest, none of them really fitted their bill, but they still wanted to sponsor, and I refused to do it because one, we want our audience to go away educated. We want them to go away with something that they can take back to the table to move their company forward and the sector forward.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to make sure that the clients that invested in ourselves got had inquiries, had lead generation, and I couldn't see it would be any valuable to either the audience or themselves. So, out of a conscientious decision, from a thought leadership basis, it wasn't a good fit.
Yeah, makes sense. But for example, how do you ensure transparency and build trust with your clients?
Very, very simple, old school sort of dialogue. It would be just tell the truth. So don't sugarcoat anything. Just say things how they are. So just put your cards on the table and just say this is what we're working with, and you'd be very, very surprised that a lot of people in business don't do this these days. they try and keep things close to the chest. They try and not tell the whole truth. And that's what, when you mentioned about what makes us different is
Yeah,
we tell the truth from the start. And for me, that brings so much credibility to the relationship, which is why they trust us.
yeah, makes sense. And for example, when you talk to potential clients, what's the biggest misconception they typically have about what you do?
Business misconception will probably be that we're a small company. So we're competing with huge companies with huge revenue streams, with loads of accolades, and we position ourselves with our USP with the personal relationship basis. So that's where it is a challenge. So, for example, I've been working over in Asia Pacific for the last 2 years, and we've not really made too much ground. However, this month we've just had confirmation from the Ministry of Economy for Malaysia and Petronas will work alongside us in Malaysia. It's took me 2 years, but it's worked. But it's these
Right,
kind of relationships that have to be built, and things take time. But if you're
right.
persistent and you're committed, and if people can see that, then things transpire in a different way.
Yeah, exactly. And now, looking at the broader industry, what key trends are you seeing emerge?
Well, I think in the trends of the industries, I think um, geopolitical is a big issue. You've got things happening obviously within obviously Ukraine, within Israel, obviously with North America, obviously within even Southeast Asia itself. So I think geopolitical is a big issue at the moment, and unfortunately, when it comes to industry, there's no one that can influence geopolitical when it comes to governments, and it's something I try and avoid because
Yeah,
it's very very difficult to analyze and predict because unfortunately you don't really have any kind of influence or
yeah, yeah.
say from that perspective. So that would be the first one, and the second one, digitalization. I think it doesn't matter what sector you're in at the moment, digitalization is going to be a key component in terms of cost saving, in terms of operational efficiency, in terms of supply chain. So they would probably be the two biggest things I would say, and then that would be across all sectors, not just
Of
within the
course.
energy sector.
Yeah, yeah, of course. And you emphasize the importance of finding your passion. So, how do you encourage students to discover their own passions?
Basically, so I work locally with two colleges in our area. So we've won 2 awards, me and the team, over the last 2 years for our contribution to the community. So we had three students working alongside us for 2 years. We're, we're having another batch of students coming in January for another 2 years. And this wasn't just about the energy sector. This was about I helped two of the students have their own businesses in terms of incorporating them on company's house, helping with the website, helping with the logos. So I think for me, from a business perspective and from a community perspective, is giving back to the community, giving your lessons learned because unfortunately there's not much help out there at the moment in terms of guidance. You have your college, you have your universities, but when you're in that grey area, it becomes quite difficult, and especially when you're young adolescents moving into the working environment, it can be quite confusing. So we try and guide them in that perspective.
Right. And yeah, it sounds like you're ahead of the curve in many ways, which makes me curious about your growth plans. So, how are you looking to grow for the next year?
For ourselves, I said obviously we've just launched our event within Malaysia in APAC in June. We have obviously a European event and our UK event, and our consultancy we're working alongside different government funding opportunities, working with different clients. So for us, it's mainly ensuring that we're giving back one to the community, but also to the industry. So we won't do anything unless it's going to make value or add value. Because I think I'm sure we all know this. There's a lot of people are driven by money and driven by turnover. Where we're not. We want to make a difference. Uh, the amount of time, the amount of hours I spend on a pro bono basis is quite a lot.
Yeah.
Um, because for me, it's about giving back. Because I didn't have it when I was younger, and I want these are the things I want to change.
Yeah, makes sense. But you mentioned before that an interesting point. So for the growth plans, is AI on top of your mind?
Yeah, so I've been using something called ChatGPT recently. So basically, I don't. So I when it comes to AI, I know it's not 100% accurate, but you can decipher the key elements and the key points, which can then sort of put your mind into a different manner. So I think AI is a great tool. I think it will help direct your mm, pathways and your objectives in a different way, or certainly maybe flag up red flags that you wouldn't have thought of in the past. So I think any kind of technology is you utilize the tools that you have, don't you? And because let's be honest, there's that much information in the world these days. There's no way you can keep up with it all.
Yeah, right. But for example, if you are looking at a broader scale, and if I gave you like $1 million for growth right now, where would you allocate it?
East Asia would be my biggest. The reason being is that they're at the cusp of the journey of energy transition, and it costs a lot of money. And
Yeah,
that's if you look at how much North America, Europe, the UK, Middle East have spent on energy transition already, you're talking trillions. And there's a lot. If you look at the US, for example, you've got state by state, different rules, different regulations. Middle East, you've got obviously the conflicts that are happening within the region, and Europe have already started, and they're now trying to get to FID, which is final investment decision from investors. So for me, anything from a pre-feasibility study, which is feed engineering and design, these are the things that need to be done straight away, and the government are quite behind at the moment. So
yeah,
that would be. I shouldn't really say that, but that would be my go-to um, area at the moment.
yeah, but you're right. And before we wrap up, I'm curious about what's on the horizon. So, when you look at Chameleon Energy Consultancy journey over the next few years, what possibilities excite you the most?
At the moment, I can't say too much, but we have acquired very high-level independent consultants. So what we're looking to at the moment is for projects within energy transition. So that could be anything from solar, wind, tidal, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, ammonia, ethanol, methanol, anything you could make within the industrial sectors. We have a group of consultants and companies that can offer a turnkey solution for an asset owner or a project developer where they won't have to source 7 different people, 10 different people. We do it all in house. So we're sat as our anchor to accelerate and be very agile, which
Yeah,
makes us a bit different.
yeah, interesting. And for listeners who want to learn more or potentially work with Chameleon Energy Consultants, what's the best way to get in touch?
So if you go to our website, so Chameleon Energy Consultants .co.uk or chameleonevents.co.uk, you can contact me via obviously our direct chat on the website. And yeah, I'm more than happy to answer any questions and be really keen to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. Perfect. So, thanks for tuning in today, Callum, and for this amazing podcast session. And for anyone listening, make sure to check out Chameleon Energy Consultant socials below in the description because this episode was packed with value and I can't wait to see what you build next.
Thanks very much, Alexander. I really appreciate your time. and obviously working with me as well. Thank you very much.
Perfect. See you in the next episode.